means to you, what God means to me. What's God's place in the world that we live in? To us, what does God mean? I am talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about God.
Hello and welcome to Talking About God. Today we've got Mikayla joining us. Good morning, Mikayla. How are you?
I'm pretty good this morning.
Welcome, and we're going to have a chat. So tell me, we're going to talk about God today. Who's God to you?
God's like this presence that's always there. Like, he's never not there. So I always think of him as around me at all times, being the one that guides my life. Just, yeah.
How important's God been in your life?
God's been very important. My mum was a born-again Christian at about 18, so she brought me and my sister up to believe in God, always reading Bible stories. My favourite book was the kids' Bible, so I'd always read the kids' stories and I knew them inside out and back to front. And God's just always been there in my life, like he's always been a big presence.
What's your relationship like with God at the moment?
Pretty good. Sometimes I don't rely on him as much as I should. I know that when I've got some issues I should go to him, and sometimes I try and do things on my own. But overall I think I've got a pretty solid relationship with God and knowing who he is.
Has it always been like that?
Pretty much. I think I was about 10 years old, so I've always had a belief in God because Mum's brought me up. We've always prayed at night, said our own prayers. I think about 10 I was invited to like a young youth conference. I don't remember exactly who was speaking. I know he was a skater dude and we were just so intrigued about his story, and he made the altar call to come up and like give your life to God. And then from that moment on I attended youth groups, and God's always been a solid in my life from 10 years old all the way through.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Yeah. Has God ever revealed God's self to you?
I've heard God's voice I think once in my life, and it's quite funny. It was when I was in grade 11 and I was house captain, and I remember working so hard at the swimming carnival to get people involved, people like engaged in everything, swimming in races, and just trying to get that house spirit. And at the end of the carnival, I don't think we did too well, and I was just so frustrated, and I was just like, God, why did this work out like this? And I just remember hearing this audible voice, because you never asked.
Wow, that's really powerful, that story.
It was really powerful. It's the first time I've heard, first and like mainly dominant time that I've heard his voice. And that was a big realization to me, is that in our life we try and do so many things on our own, and we don't realize that God has the power and that we need to give it over to him. And you know, in difficult times, like I said, we try and figure it out ourselves, and God's right there. Like I said, God's a presence around us, and we don't rely on him as much as we should. Yeah.
Have you ever had any other moments in life where you've had an encounter with God?
Not so much an encounter with God, but I've always felt God's presence around me. There was a difficult time a few years ago, and I can't remember what Bible verse it was. It was something about give your worries to the Lord, and he will take care of you, because he takes care of good people. And I remember that just got me through that difficult time. And I've said it to my homeroom kids a few times, and I'm like, just give your worries to the Lord. You know, he doesn't want us to carry around this burden. That's what Jesus died for on the cross. And sometimes we do carry this around, so.
It's very true. Yeah. It's very true. If I gave you a pen and paper and I asked you to draw God, what would you draw?
Oh, I'd be really traditional. I'd probably draw an old man with a white beard in a blue gown, dress thing. I've always, I don't know, maybe from my kids' Bible stories when they showed what God was like. That's how I've always seen.
That's your image.
That's my image, is like, kind of, yeah, that's the kind of image I have, with a big white beard. Kind of like a Santa, but in a blue like gown.
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time today, and we'll chat next time. See ya.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about God. You're talking about, I'm talking about God. What God means to you, what God means to me. What's God's place in the world that we live in? To us, what does God mean? I am talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about God. You're talking about, I'm talking about God. Talking about God.